Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be starting in about 3 minutes. So if candidates, if you would like to make your way towards the stage, we are going to do the at-large candidates first.
I am here. I am here.
Yes, we on live. Cool. And then you can share it too. You can share it so you can everybody who couldn't make it out. I'm at peace. I scanned through it because I was there at that event, the major event that y'all had over there, the Greater Homes, that was Saturday morning. The Better Homes event in your PowerPoint. Yeah, yeah. I remember seeing you there. Yeah, I remember that. When I went through a lot of those things, I was all over it. I have no problems. Too.
Pastor Owens.
Oh, you want him to give prayer?
Where is he? That's what I was going to do.
You want to ask him to give
Would you? Oh, do you need to be up there? Because I was going to ask you to do prayer.
Yeah, I'd rather. Yeah, let him do it. You know? I have no problems doing prayer, but since he's here, I'll yield.
Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, and it is time to begin our candidate forum. Welcome, welcome. We will be discussing tonight the issues and policies related to our upcoming elections. And this forum is just an opportunity for voters to hear directly from the candidates and for the candidates to share their own views and perspectives on important topics related to the Far Northwest neighborhood and District 1. Thank you all for joining us today. We have an audience today on Facebook Live, and so welcome. We look forward to hearing your questions as well. I would like to thank Pastor Owens and Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church, our host and partner for tonight's event. Pastor Owens, would you offer a prayer to start us off?
Amen.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for those in the sanctuary. Thank you for those that are on the screen. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your providence that has allowed us to be here. While we planned it and programmed it, you didn't have to let it be so. So, Lord, we first of all say thank you. Then I pray, God, that you would bless every candidate. I would pray that you would bless them with strength as they go down this last journey. I pray that you would bless their voices, their campaign, their strength, give them the energy that they will finish strong. Then I pray, Lord, that you would bless us in spite of all technical difficulties. I pray that you would bless us, that you would give us what we need, that we would be good, concerned voters and do our job to be able to do what you gave us to do, the right to be able to vote. Bless us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. So tonight we'll begin with our at-large candidates. And to ensure the discussion is productive and respectful, we've established a few ground rules. I don't think we'll have a problem with that, but we like to put it out there, right? First, we ask all participants, including candidates and audience members, to remain civil and respectful in their communications. Personal attacks, insults, we're not going to have any of those. We're not going to even have to address that. Second, we ask that all participants adhere to the topic at hand and stay focused on the issues being discussed. And third, we ask all participants be mindful of our time as we have a limited amount of time for the forum. Each candidate will have the opportunity to introduce themselves and their platform. Following the introductions, we'll move to a moderated discussion where each candidate will have a chance to answer questions from the moderator and from the audience. We ask that all participants keep their comments concise and to the point, avoid going off topic. And to keep us on task, please allow me to prompt you with a reminder to wrap up your question or comment. Our goal for this forum is to provide voters with a better understanding of where the candidates stand on important issues and to promote a thoughtful and respectful discussion. An overview of tonight's forum: each candidate will share a 2-minute introduction, then we'll ask questions and allow each candidate to answer. There will be a mic in the center aisle to take questions from the audience, and those who on Facebook can simply send in questions as well. Finally, at the end, candidates will have time to share a 2-minute closing statement. So we'll start, as I said, with the at-large candidate and round out our evening with the 2 candidates vying to represent our voices as our District 1 council member. So let's begin with the 2-minute prepared statement from your candidates in alphabetical order. And so we'll begin with Oliver Davis.
Good evening, and it's glad to be here. To the pastor of this church, Pastor Owens, and to Miss Regina Preston, Williams Preston, who I had a chance to serve on the council. It was an honor to be here and in the first district. To our current council members here, Mr. Davis, Mr. Lee, and Ms. Hammond, we thank you so much for you all being here today. I'm Oliver Davis, and I always tell you my telephone number when I start out: 574-876-6938. 574-876-6938. Because you need to be able to reach me. I believe in being an at-large council person. You should be able to reach me, call me, and take some time to get a chance to know me. I get a chance to know you. And by you having direct access to me, you will be able to share your concerns. For 12 years, I served on the South Bend Common Council representing District 6. And even though I represented District 6, I did a lot for the city of South Bend because I served on the area plan, and I also served 16 years on transport. So I was all over town dealing with issues. I also served as a South Bend school social worker at Dickinson Fine Arts Academy, which primarily serves this district. After Brown School closed, a lot of the students who go here go to Dickinson. And so I'm up here in these neighborhoods all the time and everything else. So I understand a lot of the issues that are going on in the first district. I see the first district, and I deal with many of the families in the first district on a regular basis. My key thing is that we need to have a voice and to move forward to make positive changes here.
Excellent, thank you so much. And Ms. Hammond.
Thank you. I am your current at-large council member. My name is Lori Hammond, and it's been a pleasure to serve you for the last 3.5 years. Some of the issues that I've worked on, I was one of the 3 authors of the Community Police Review Board ordinance, and we are still working to get a director seated, as well as seating the board and getting them trained. My commitment is to have that done before the end of 2023. I have also spent the last 2.5 years working with the unhoused in our city. It started in Monroe Park neighborhood when we had the tent encampment that housed around 100 of our residents, even small children and young infants. And it was unbelievable to me that in South Bend we would have such conditions for people to live in. It was the beginning of the pandemic. They had no way to wash their hands. They had no bathroom facilities. They had nothing. So my husband and I would go every week and we would clean that parking lot, including cleaning up, and this is not a pleasant comment, but human feces, because they had nowhere to go to the restroom. And so we worked with Our Lady of the Road and other service providers to establish the Motels for Now program. And I know there are some folks that look at that motel and think, wow, that is not a very nice facility. Well, for these folks that were previously unhoused, that is a castle to them. They have a door they can lock, they have running water, they have a bed that they can lay their head on and rest and feel safe. So I will continue to work on these issues. I am an independent council member. I am not part of the governing team, and I intend to remain the one council member that is willing to ask the difficult questions of the mayor, of the department heads, of my council colleagues, because I think that is how a true democracy runs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond, so important. And we have our third council person candidate who will be joining us tonight for at-large, Ms. Laquita Hughes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Laquita Hughes. I am a teacher. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am an advocate. I am the former member of the Community Relations Committee who worked closely with the Common Council and the previous mayor. I also am a former board member of the League of Women Voters. So, and I also am a local minister. So I am running because I have seen the disparities in our community. I work hand in hand with youth and families. I have 20 plus years working in the mental health field, from Madison Center to Oakline to JJC. So who would know best what's going on in our community? Someone who has been working with youth and families all of these years and seeing how how the trajectory of our communities have shifted drastically and also in pleasant ways. So like I said, I'm running because I am an advocate. I'm not afraid to speak the truth. First and foremost, I'm a woman of God. And with that being said, our goal is to assist, to help. And that is what I'm doing by any means necessary. So thank you, former Councilwoman Regina Preston. I worked with you, received a proclamation from the city of South Bend for doing as such. Thank you for inviting me, and that is why I'm running.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing a little bit about yourself. Now, let's hear more about your position on the issues. Tonight's questions come directly from the people of the Far Northwest neighborhood. Our boundaries, for those of you who don't know, we are Bendix to Johnston on the east to west boundaries, and Lathrop to Elwood for the north and south. And we spent the last 3 weeks knocking on doors, talking to neighbors about the issues that matter most to them. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer a question, and we will allow 30 seconds for a rebuttal if a candidate needs to respond directly. Please allow me, again, to give you a vocal prompt as the time winds down, and then we'll give you 30 seconds to finish the answer. Okay, let's get to it. First question. As we talked to neighbors and invited them to join us tonight for the forum, the most frequent comment was, why bother? They don't listen to us anyway. They get in there, do whatever they want, and we don't see them again until election season. This is a well-founded sentiment that is shared by people across the city. What is your plan to increase engagement and communication with the residents of the Far Northwest neighborhood? And we'll begin, actually, we're going to go in reverse order here. We'll begin with Lori Hammond, and then each time we'll start with a new person.
Thank you. I agree with this concern. Several months back, I met with Mayor Mueller as well as with President Sharon McBride and past President Karen White to discuss an environmental justice resolution that I had brought forward. And in that environmental resolution, it required that the city write a community engagement plan. This is important for many reasons. Number one, it allows the community to understand what they can expect from their elected officials, but it also holds all department heads, all elected officials accountable for their engagement with the communities. As I was writing this resolution, I ran across a couple different examples that we could utilize from around the country. The one that I like the best is out of Seattle, Washington. It is an inclusive engagement plan. It is many pages long, but I'm hoping to bring this forward again to the mayor to really impose upon him or impress upon him that this is a critical piece to creating trust and belief in the governing body of this city. Right now, I do not think that we hold the trust of the people because we, as was stated, they see us every 4 years unless they make their way down to the county city building. Secondly, I would like to see us have council meetings, committee meetings in the communities more often. I did this when I was chair of the Community Relations Committee, when we were trying to get community engagement around the Community Police Review Board, and we held it in the open air parks. The VPA, Venue Parks and Arts Department, came out and created a safe environment during COVID and allowed us to do that. So there are many
Lord.
tools that we can use.
Thank you. And actually, we'll go to, I'm just going to go straight down. How about that? That'll be easier for me to remember. All right.
I understand.
Dr. Oliver Davis.
Thank you for the question. I gave my cell phone number at the beginning, and I give it again, 574-876-6938. Because throughout my time on the council, people had my cell phone number. The best way to reach me is call me, text me. And I think your elected officials, people are like, you give out your number in this day and time? I'm like, yeah. The reason is because the people of South Bend are my boss. They're my boss. And even though I have been off the council for a few years, they still call me and still talk to me, whether I'm in the barbershop, whether I'm over at Kroger's, when I'm over here, Jimmy John's, all these different places, they still talk. And I have a responsibility to answer and to talk. And so that's what I do. I give them my cell phone number, they text me, they can send me a message on Facebook. I'm there. That's, to me, is one of the best ways to do it, is by them knowing where we live. People have come to my house and knocked on the door. I lived at 1801 Nash Street, South Bend. You know, people know where I live. They know where I do that. They almost know what time I get my haircuts too. So, because they show up there right on Sample Street. Hey, I'm waiting on you. We're in a community where we have to talk to each other. So I appreciate that. I'm good.
You're good.
You got my number.
You are
Yeah,
right.
as long as you
What
got
else
my
do we
number,
need? What else do we need?
That's
Excellent.
it.
Thank you. And Ms. Laquita Hughes.
Well, my approach would be to focus from a targeted, multifaceted approach. First and foremost, we need to be present in the communities. We need to also be able to be reached by the residents, but we also need to be present. Residents need to know who is representing their district. They need to know what you stand for and who you are and how to get in touch with you. That's first and foremost. Secondly, they need to know that you care. Caring just breeds a multifaceted approach by putting town hall meetings together. That has always been my pitch when representing the residents, working as a community relations committee member, being the voice for them, getting a vote for them prior to the council meetings. Meetings take place before you even see those come out. So I've always been one to stand up and to be that one to say, they need our help, they need our assistance, they need to see our faces. We need to be putting town hall meetings in force, not when a shooting happens, not when somebody's roof is falling off, but periodically. It needs to be happening repetitively. We go to church every Sunday, so they need to see our face at least more than once and twice a week. That is my approach. That's what I'm standing on. If I am elected, they will know who I am. They will know what I stand for, and they will know that if there is an issue, we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
You're
I
welcome.
think we had
I just-
another statement.
Yes, please. The other thing that I have done over the last couple of years is held safety meetings in the communities. The neighbors around the Motels for Now Nights In facility had some concerns. So I called a safety meeting, and we held it at St. John's Church and allowed people to talk to one of the safety officers as well as and express their concerns. And I think one of the biggest things about communication is allowing the residents to talk about the concerns that they have. So not only do we have to be present, but we have to learn to be better listeners.
Thank you. Excellent. So our next question will begin with Dr. Davis. In previous forums in this election cycle, candidates have made mention of equity in service and investment across the city as being a critical issue to address. Neighbors in the far northwest are concerned about the disproportionate response to cleaning up illegal dumps and the disproportionate harassment and ticketing of residents who fall victim to illegal or uncontrolled dumping. First question, how can we get uncontrolled dumping under control? And how can we ensure that residents are not subject to excessive fines and fees for other people dumping trash and debris onto their property?
Great question. I'm glad the residents have shared that. First of all, we got to honor what they have said is true. For my years in the 6th District, the biggest challenge that we had that's similar is graffiti. And I had got graffitied several times. And the crazy thing about graffiti is you oftentimes, if they did your garage in the back, you didn't know it. And then you get a letter from the city that said that they're going to fine you so many hundreds of dollars. So first of all, you get graffiti. And then you find out and you go up there and look at it. And now you're getting a fine. Okay? So you're mad. And here I am. I was on the council, and I don't care. I'm still getting these letters myself. So as you see that, we have to work with code enforcement to not penalize those of us. We're already victim. So it's hurting the victim who's already been a victim. And we were able to work with the former code enforcement people. Currently, I hear that there's no leader there, but you have to work with all of them to be able to even work with that so we don't get fined as we work to eradicate the problem, and that we were able to do that. You can go through now most of the 6th District, and you don't see the kind of graffiti that we used to have, because we made that a target. We put it out there. We had media about it. We worked with the neighbors about it, and same thing needs to be done here in that area where we can do that, but not fine us and make sure that we move forward, because cleaning up a city helps all of us. It beautifies the whole group, helps us our property, helps our schools, helps everybody, helps our mental health. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and when you have a better place to live, your mental health is stronger. So that's the way I roll with it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ms. Hughes, the same question.
Well, once again, I will say this particular issue needs to be tackled from a targeted and multifaceted approach. I personally ran a business next door to a vacant lot, so I know what the residents are saying. I made hundreds of calls. The issue is lots of times we don't know who owns the lots. So when you have community residents calling down to the county city building, they struggle with obtaining who owns that property. So first and foremost, that's a headache. So we need to first put a system in place with code enforcement. First, we need to find out who owns the properties, because residents dump furniture and all types of bedding materials in vacant lots. We are struggling right now with the pandemic of bed bugs. A lot of times you're gonna see more furniture pieces wherever there is a lot of room in an alley to place those items. So we need to tackle this from a multifaceted approach. First and foremost, we need to work with the council. We need to find out and address questions and concerns as far as creating a portal of who owns what particular land. If we have allowed people to come from out of town and buy lots of land, which that's an issue that we're dealing with right now, it's hard to reach these landlords. So you have to tackle it first and foremost from the core of it, from a precipitating factor approach. We need to find out who owns the land. If it is someone there and it is a resident or just someone who owns that particular deed, has access to that deed, we need to have conversations with them. But as far
10 more seconds.
okay, as far as the excessive tax, that can only be tackled, and I'm willing to have more conversations about it if I am elected, but we first need to put a portal together as far as who owns the land.
Right on time. Ms. Hammond.
Thank you. Going back to that environmental justice resolution, this was a key part of what I was trying to address. I had a 2-hour meeting with Dr. Bob Einters to discuss how the dumping in some of our disadvantaged neighborhoods were actually creating environmental and health threats to the community. One of the big culprits are waste tires that people remove from their cars and throw into lots, throw at the side of the road. What the state requires is that any of the companies that deal with tires, that remove old tires and put new ones on, is that they have to keep an annual record of how they dispose of those. But in the licensing process in the city of South Bend, we don't require them to show us those disposal records. So very simply, one simple change in that ordinance would allow us to put accountability on a number of the people involved in those waste tire disposal issues. Will that take care of 100% of it? No. We know some of it are residents that dump. But the year that I started this, we paid over, they found over 7,000 tires in South Bend that had been just thrown along the railroad tracks and in vacant lots. So it's critically important that we look not only at tires, but at all of the other dumping that is occurring and put together a structured policy. I am concerned with the fact that we still do not know who is running code enforcement. Pam Myers, wonderful lady who has worked very hard for this city for a
10
long
seconds.
time, but she retired weeks ago, and we still do not know who is running that department. That's a problem, because this is a department that has a great deal of responsibility for caring for the health and well-being of our community.
Thank you. And one thing you'll know about the far northwest, the neighbors in the far northwest neighborhood, is that not only do they're happy to talk about what the problems are, but a lot of times they've got some really good solutions. So just a quick 30-second response. There are specific lots in our neighborhood where people dump construction debris, trash, mattresses over and over again. Like, we know where those lots are. It's been going on for decades. Residents would like the city to put up signs that express fines and no dumping to help deter this property crime from happening, and to install cameras just at those specific spots to catch people who habitually dump. The city has asked us, they said, this is what I hear, there's a big thing about this Ring camera, but the city has asked us to use our Ring cameras. Can we get cameras to monitor these property crimes at these dump sites? And the question I have for you, just very quickly, are you willing to advocate for these kinds of lower cost remedies? And we'll start with Ms. Hughes.
I am willing to advocate for those low-cost amenities because I actually, as residents in an area where I was having an issue, to have their cameras going, you know, at night, make sure they put their ring on, they don't leave it off. If their kids are outside with their phone, try to take a picture of their license plate, you know, numbers, things like that, so that we can start reporting if it is someone from out of state or someone in town.
Great, thank you.
Yes, I'm willing to do that because it works.
This would be an acceptable use of our real-time crime center, is if we could monitor lots that we know that they are dumping at. Absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. You know you're being recorded, right? Okay.
Always.
All right, our next question, I think we're back to Ms. Hammond to start. Neighbors on Olive and Johnson have engaged in a conversation about traffic calming for years. We've asked for a speed bump or a speed hump to be installed on those streets specifically. The city installed an electronic speed sign on Johnson, but sadly, residents report that it has only served to challenge drivers to see how fast they can get those numbers up. So people noted 3 speed humps newly installed on Lathrop. Okay, but 3 is the question on Lathrop and still none on Olive and Johnson. So for you, the question, what considerations do you make when deciding where to place a speed bump? And if elected to the council, will you commit to advocating for and voting to allocate dollars to install speed bumps or humps on Olive and Johnson in the early next term?
Quick answer would be yes, but I do think we need to take a deeper look into what is happening throughout our city in terms of traffic. These are complaints that we hear from every single neighborhood in the city. So now that we are up to the numbers required for the police department, it would be nice to once again have a traffic division. People know that there are no penalties, or almost no penalties, for reckless driving in the city. And that has created speedways. I've requested a number of speed studies to be done, one on Frederickson, a couple others throughout the city. Another concern of mine is after those speed studies were done, I never got any feedback as to what is the result of the speed study and then what will be the remedy to mitigate some of the traffic issues. So there is a lack of communication happening. I'm not sure where the disconnect is, but the speed humps are a good temporary solution, but I don't know that we will ever have the funds to be able to install them in every road, every street in the city, and it's pretty much that ubiquitous of a problem.
Thank you.
I think that what we have to do, which has already been done, is for us to look at the high traffic areas, which we already know. And one of the fastest ways to cut across is to go from Lathrop all the way down on Olive Street as you want to head south, especially with all the other traffic issues going on. I've done it many years where I've gone from Olive all the way down to go over Sample Street and head home to Rum Village. So it's easier to come this way. And so, therefore, since we already know that, the things that we already know, while I recommend, and I do believe in studies, there's some things we already know. And I think we need to look at the roads that we already know. For years, on Ewing was the south. We didn't need to do any more studies on that. We already knew that. They crossed there. So the places that are already there, we've already traveled, you can talk to your council people, you can talk to your neighborhood organizations for them to identify the 3 streets that they already know. And then let's go with the ones that we already know, because everybody already knows who goes over here all the time, and I'm here doing home visits all the time with our students, that the fastest way to get back over there when I go to lunch is to go to the stores there, cut over here, go there, go right over to Dickens. I mean, I already know the fast ways. So therefore, let's put the money in there to deal with that. And I would also say this, as we have people in those offices, they need to have a lot more people who live in the city of South Bend. Sometimes the people who who work in those offices and some of the key people don't live in South Bend. So when they make these decisions when it comes to our public streets and our water and everything else, they don't have to deal with it, and they don't know because they don't come and travel over here. So I travel here. And you need to make sure that your leaders are traveling all over the city, not just traveling in election time.
Thank you. Ms. Hughes.
Yes. Well, first and foremost, if I am elected, I would tackle this issue from a equitable economic standpoint. It needs to be tackled in that way. It will require previous studies, but it also will require residents. It will require people actually living in these areas to have the opportunity to speak out and to say, this particular crime is arising in our area. This is the area where we're seeing trucks and vehicles that belong in the country on these small inner city streets, back and forth, all day, every day, especially when it gets warm. And so I was one who advocated for speed bumps on Huey Street. So please add that street in. Huey Street, Renegade Daycare, on that street. I was amazed at the mileage that cars were traveling, almost hitting kids. So I would honestly say we need to look at the research from previous that was done. We need to repair the disconnect. Whatever director is heading that department, we need to bridge the gap, find out where the disconnect is coming from as far as with council and the administration with the mayor. And then we also need to bridge another tier and bring the residents to the table. And that is where you're going to get accurate information from, as far as probably record the speed of what the cars are going. That is my approach on it. We need to tackle it from that approach because I see it every day, especially in the warmer days throughout the city. It's all over the city of South Bend. And so it's happening, especially
10 seconds.
we need to even, I would even be willing to implement a law or review policies as far as the vehicles, these motorcycle bike looking. Can somebody tell me the name of them?
Thank you. Thank you. We'll get the name for you later. I think I saw someone wanting another comment. Yes.
Want to mention that we are constrained by state statute, and there are certain things that many of us would love to do. We'd love to use cameras to catch people speeding down streets, but state statute bars us from doing such. So we are constrained by that. And so the policies and things that we dream up have got to fit within what is possible.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Hughes.
Rebuttal?
Yes.
I would like to say not only what Councilwoman Ms. Hammond just said, we also need to be realistic when we have the opportunity to vote on these issues as councilmen and councilwomen. And we need to be able to vote on these issues honestly and not be afraid to speak the truth, because what we all are representing or trying to represent is the residents, the mission of the Common Council.
Thank you. This final question from the moderator, and then we're going to turn it quickly to the audience to see if we have some folks with questions there. It's something that you guys have been answering, I'm sure, in life, as a council member, as a candidate. It's about violence. We're going to go ahead and take those 2 minutes for each because this is an important issue. And this question comes straight from the League of Women Voters Vote 411. Targeted shootings have increased significantly compared to 5 years ago. What can the council do to address the issue of local gun violence? What steps will you take to address the problem? I think we are at Ms. Hammond.
Thank you. The crime level and the number of shootings taking place in South Bend is very upsetting. It's staggering to the mind, actually. There were questions that were brought up at several different debates regarding where the guns are coming from, how are they getting here. We know, excuse me, that we are dealing with a state law that has made South Bend, as well as the rest of the state, pretty much the Wild West in terms of guns and gun ownership. The approaches for police attention to these issues, number one would be community policing, which would start to create relationships, start to mend some of the levels of distrust that exist within our communities, to have police officers actually on foot in the neighborhoods. It sounds like an old-fashioned model, but it worked, and it is working in other communities, and it is something that I believe that now, again, that we have the number of officers, we could try this again. I am not an advocate of the Real-Time Crime Center. I just believe there have been too many problems with surveillance and cameras and facial recognition. I think we have stepped onto a very slippery slope and need to be concerned and very cautious as we move forward with that. But I also want to...
10 seconds.
Thank you. We need to be willing to move beyond the programs that we have been funding for the last several years. There are a lot of creative options out there, and I think that we have kind of gotten ourselves stuck in a rut and believe that the things we do are the only things we can do, and we need new creative ideas for calming some of the crime in South Bend.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Davis.
As a school social worker, my mic's off. Is it on? There it is. As a school social worker, I currently see the effects of what's going on with our last shooting, because so many of that is of the people who are at the school where I go, and I work every day and hear the stories. And in hearing their stories, I think that we have to take the time to hear their stories. And it's not just a police issue, it's a community issue where we really have to take the time to see. Shooting is a form of communication. It's a sad way to do it. Okay, I'm mad at you, I shoot you, then I'm mad at you, I shoot you back, I'm mad at your friend, I shoot them. It's the way people communicate. And once you would put shooting in the form of communication, then you have to look at it and say, okay, what do we do since this generation, and even some of their older generation, people, that's the way they've learned how to communicate. And so we have to sit there, since we know there's a potential for a retaliation, where is the retaliation coming from? Can we go talk to them and before the retaliation takes place? Those are the kind of things that leaders have to do, police, families, social workers, and all of us have to do, parents, and come together, watch. And we have to study social media. I encourage more parents to get on social media. People are like, I don't get on social media. I got on social media when my children were there because we have to monitor that. And oftentimes, I know as a social worker, you can spot when a situation's coming. How do you know about the fight? You screenshot it. You said you were going to start the fight at 10 o'clock. These young people, they tell you a lot of their fights. They just do. Now, I said, boy, we were used to hide ours, so we all knew a fight was going to happen. When I was a kid, we didn't tell them. We didn't have no social media. But today, fight will happen on this street at 3:30. Be there, really, after the bus is off. So we need to be aware of what's going on, study the social media issues,
10
and move
seconds.
forward. I'm done.
Ms. Hughes.
The Common Council can play an essential role in addressing local gun violence through policy making, resource allocation, and community engagement. These are the steps that I would take if elected Common Council. I can tell you first and foremost that I can tell you firsthand, my child care center was closed due to gun violence. Okay, I'm gonna start there. Because of shootings in the neighborhood. I know small business owners such as myself and residents are frustrated, okay, first and foremost, of the violence that's arising in our areas. I personally would like to have the Common Council review the Peacemaker Fellowships, their petition. First and foremost, there's enough data to support that 80% of shootings were reduced in California. I'm not saying, I believe that we need more than one solution. We have to tackle things from a multifaceted approach. I'm not saying that the programs that are in place right now are not working, but I'm saying I know of a program that has worked and there's data to prove it. We need to implement and work with that particular organization and move forward. Violence, first and foremost, has just taken a toll, okay, on our city. We have to be realistic and we have to speak the truth. I too work with youth and families, with kids.
10
who
seconds.
See it. They come to school. They tell you how they sleep. They tell you when they're restless. You know when there's shootings going on. I can hear them myself. So that is my approach. We definitely need to partner and take another look at the Peace Builders Peacemaker Fellowship Initiative and move from that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hughes. We have just 3 minutes or so till 6:45 when we'll be transitioning to our next debate or our next forum. I'm looking, is there anyone in the audience that has any questions? I'm not sure if we had any on Facebook Live. Awesome. Okay. Well, can you join me, please, in thanking our representatives for the candidate for at-large? Remember that you have 3 votes for the at-large position. There are 5 people running, but 3 folks are here tonight, and we thank you for coming. Okay, we have 2 candidates vying for the opportunity to represent our voice here in District 1. I'll ask them to come to the stage at this time. What you'll notice is that the questions are the same. We believe that, again, we're coming right from our neighbors, right in this neighborhood, so we want to make sure that you are hearing from our representatives or potential representatives on the issues that matter to our neighbors most. All right, thank you, gentlemen. The rules will be the same. We're going to have 2 minutes for your responses, and we'll give a 30-second rebuttal if needed, as needed. Okay? So let's begin with a 2-minute prepared statement, just introducing yourself, and we're going to again go in alphabetical order, so I think that would mean Nick Hammond will go first.
All right. Hello. So my name is Nick Hammond. Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Macedonia Church, for having this event. Thank you for South Bend for paying attention to this election season. I'm running for the 1st District of South Bend, and that includes this neighborhood and it includes all of the northwest side of South Bend. The reason I'm running for South Bend in this district is because this is where I grew up. So I grew up here in the northwest neighborhood, and I then later moved to Boland Park. I went to Holy Cross Grade School right down the street. Ended up going to St. Joe High School and graduated from Notre Dame. I love South Bend, and I think, and growing up here was like the highlight of my life. And I loved the Portage Elwood neighborhood. I worked at Martin's. I worked at McDonald's when I was 15 years old. I worked every place that you can imagine. I lived in every neighborhood in this 1st District. 1st District needs help. And it has the most beautiful part of the city. It has the most art, cultural centers of the city. It has the most economically vibrant parts of the city, but it has been disinvested with. And we need to turn that around. And what's going to turn that around is a real strong advocacy. And that's what I pledge to bring to the 1st District. So we need a council person that's going to stand there and talk to the mayor and say, hey, we need to invest here, now. We need this now. We need safety now. We need code enforcement now. We need things to be coached up now. And so that's what I pledge to bring to South Bend. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And Councilman Lee.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Far Northwest Neighborhood Association in Macedonia, Missionary Baptist Church, for allowing us to be here. I used to sing at this church as a kid. I grew up right there, right around the corner, right? 1930 Elmer, and I live right behind that in 1929 Huey Street. This is my neighborhood. This is my community. I know all of the people that lived here. We were a family in this neighborhood, and we worked together to make this a great neighborhood. We know the history of the 1700 block and the Better Homes That was the first place where better opportunities for African Americans could have homes here in this neighborhood. And so I'm honored that when Tim Scott stepped down in 2020, that the community asked me to run. I've been a pastor here for 21 years, right around the corner on Elwood and Johnson, and was vice president of the Far Northwest Neighborhood Association, helping to build and strengthen when they didn't have a place to meet. I was able to open up the doors of my church and open up my community center so that this organization could begin to be a stronger organization. Stepping into the role of a city councilman, been able to help advocate for curbs, sidewalks, and lights for this neighborhood, for the individuals here. Been able to stand up when investors wanted to put a vape shop in our neighborhood, and have been able to connect with all parts of the district so that we can make the first district a better district. And so I've been excited about this opportunity to serve. I'm the third person in leadership, serving as the chairman of the committee of the whole for the council. And I love this neighborhood. I love the first district.
10 seconds.
And I carry it on my back everywhere I go. Every morning I leave my house, I try to make the first district a better place.
Thank you. Looks like we have a couple of homegrown boys here, men, young men, men. And so we have, we'll have certainly some people who know the neighborhood. That's for sure. Thank you for that. So now we know a little bit about yourselves. Let's hear a little more about your positions on the issues. As I mentioned earlier, tonight's questions come directly from the people of the Far Northwest neighborhood. Our boundaries, I'll repeat, are from east to west, Bendix to Johnson, and north-south, Lathrop to Elwood. And as you know, we walked around and we knocked doors and we talked to people and we said, what do you want to know from your candidates? Now, as I said, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question and we'll allow 30 seconds for a rebuttal. And are we ready to go? All right, let's get to it. First question. As we talked to neighbors and invited them to join us tonight for the forum, the most frequent response was, why bother? They don't listen to us anyway. They get in there, do whatever they want to do, and we don't see them again until election season. This is actually a well-founded sentiment and is shared by people across the city. What is your plan to increase engagement and communication with the residents of the Far Northwest neighborhood? And we'll go ahead and start with Kanthlee.
Okay. Well, one of the things is that I haven't knocked on doors just for political reasons. I'm a pastor in this area. I've always been available, and people have my cell phone number, and people call me, and when they call me, I respond and go and see whatever I can do. So the doors of opportunity to engage is always open for me. And if there is a problem, if I can help, I will help. And if I don't have an answer, I'll try to get the answer. And then if we don't get the answer, then we'll continue to talk to figure out what is it that we need to get done. So I'm always in the neighborhood. I'm always picking up trash. I'm unclogging storm drains and all of that stuff in our neighborhood because I love this neighborhood. This is where my family lives. This is where I grew up. All of my brothers and sisters still live in this neighborhood that we grew up in. And so again, I'm always available. So if people need to get in touch with me, I'm gonna advocate and make sure that whatever they're asking for, we can get it done.
Can I prompt you? We have a whole minute left.
Oh, do
Besides just connecting, and you certainly know a lot of people here in the Far Northwest neighborhood, they're your family. Are there any specific systems that you might put in place to?
Well, I have good relationships with department heads, and so when there was trash on Elwood Street on a Friday night when a house got dumped out, I called on Friday night, and on Monday morning, by 8:30, they were picking it up and getting it cleaned up. So I have those relationships with individuals within the department heads to get things done when people need to get them done.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Excellent. So this is a really good question. And I think this is actually a political crisis that people still are trying to wrap their heads around. There is such little lack of engagement from most people that I would go door to door with. They are just done with it. They say, what does it matter? Why would I vote? And I have to convince them to vote, right? And especially if you're under 40, right? They don't see the system. And so this is something that we have to deal with systematically and really directly. And so here's a couple of things that we can do, right? One of the things that I'm doing, I'm trying to prove it through my campaign. And he just said, I'm doing this politically. Yeah, I am. I'm knocking on people's doors politically for a reason. Because that's how we build relationships. That's how we build connectivity to each other. And the thing is, we need to then, after the election, we need to think, okay, how are we going to stay in contact with each other? So we need to have regular group meetings. We need to have regular meetings with constituents. We need to make sure that we're building that systematically into our engagement as elected officials. And then we need to be able to help them craft solutions so that they say, here's what we want done. Is this going to get done this month? If not, why not? And then we need to be sure that when we're legislating, when we're putting up ordinances, that the community is with us, engaged the whole step of the way, not on the back end. And so those are some of the things that I'm going to advocate for when I get there.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Just to rebut that, with being part of group violence intervention, when all of the violence and shootings have happened, I was the one that got up in the middle of the night, had to leave my family. That's your job. But I'm explaining to you
Let him continue.
when we're talking about.
You have 30 seconds to rebut if you need to.
When we're talking about connecting with people, I've had to navigate people through the worst times in their lives. Many of the high-profile shootings that have happened in our city, I've been right there, not just as the group violence intervention, but also as a city councilman, but then also as a pastor, and also as somebody who actually cares about what's going on in our neighborhood and seeing the effects of the violence.
Would you like to rebut?
Yeah, I would definitely like to rebut that, because this is something that really kind of burns me. He gets paid for the mayor's office for that position. That's his full-time job. That's not his position as councilman. So what I think one of the problems we have here is that we're having these mixing of issues, like mixing of positions, mixing of everything. So how are we going to be independent? How do we know if our gun violence program is working if we have someone who is getting paid by the mayor's office then to advocate for the program at the same time? It's all kind of mixed. It's all mixed together, and I think that's like ethically a kind of a problem.
Well, let me rebut that. I'm no longer in that position. For the last 8 months, I work for Goodwill, and the grant was granted to Goodwill, so it was never me working for the city and all of that. It was a grant to Goodwill. I had the job before I was a city councilman, and so and we had city legal and our legal and everything look at it, and it was not a conflict of interest. And then now the work that I'm doing as a community connections person for Goodwill has nothing to do with GVI.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next question. In previous forums this election cycle, candidates have made mention of equity in services and investment across the city. Neighbors in the far northwest are concerned about the disproportionate response to cleaning up illegal dumps and the disproportionate harassment and ticketing of residents who fall victim to illegal or uncontrolled dumping. The question is, how can we get uncontrolled dumping under control? How can we ensure that residents are not subject to excessive fines and fees for other people dumping trash and debris on their property? I think we start with Hammond.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, and this is going to sound cliche and it's going to sound simple, but this is part of like what what district representation is about, right? So we have this problem. We have, on the one hand, we have illegal dumping by irresponsible people, and then on the other hand, we have people who can't afford to like clean up, or they're the victims of this, right? So how do we both have a strong policy that says we need to make sure that we have clean streets, we have clean places for children to play in, but yet we don't want to like fine and penalize people that are not really the cause of it. So what that takes is really like being on the ground there. This is the #1 job of somebody like who's a district representative. So there's a complaint, the district representative has to be there and has to see the situation and say, okay, is this a landlord that's out of town who's dumping tires all over the place? Or is this an old person who got stuff dumped on their graffiti, like Oliver Davis mentioned earlier, like that, like they need help, and then we can assist them in that. So that's kind of like the main issue. It all comes down to representation. It comes down to like being there on the scene and then advocating for the people that live in the neighborhood.
Well, one of the things, we had 2 neighborhood cleanups on Saturday, and I was here, and I picked up 5 bags of trash because I'm not too proud to pick up trash. Not only here, but also went over and picked up trash with the NNN on Saturday. And so the residents of this neighborhood know I'm not afraid to pick up trash. I had a lady whose mailbox got knocked over by the snowplows, and you know what I did? She was upset with the mayor's office. She was irate. I went and bought her a mailbox and replaced it, and didn't have to worry about the city reimbursing me. That's the kind of person, that's the kind of representative that I am. I'm not afraid to put my hand to the plow and work hard to build the confidence of our residents, because again, when there is an issue, our code enforcement, they'll work with you. So before you get a citation, you can talk to them, and especially if a city councilman gets involved, they're really willing to work with them, and especially if we say that it's a person who's a senior citizen, they'll work with individuals so that they don't have to bear that burden. So I'm that person that will call, that will go clean it up if I have to, and to help a resident get in a better position. Or we work with our neighborhood associations and say, hey, this is the area where people are legally dumping. Let's get code enforcement involved. They'll bring the trash bags, they'll bring the gloves, they'll bring the pickers and everything, and we can do it as a community. We've done it for several years with the Far Northwest Neighborhood Association to make sure that our neighborhood is looking better.
Thank you. Kind of a part 2 to that question you heard earlier. The residents never complain without having an idea for a solution. And there are specific lots in the Far Northwest neighborhood where people dump construction debris, trash, and mattresses over and over again. Residents would like the city to put up signs like fines and no dumping to help deter this property crime, and to install cameras to catch the people who habitually dump, just in those specific lots. So, the city has asked us to use our Ring cameras for crime. Why can't we get cameras to monitor these property crimes? And are you willing to advocate for these low-cost remedies? Kenneth?
Yeah, most
Pastor
definitely.
Lee.
I would definitely ask for signs to be put up. Now, I will have to find out about cameras and all that stuff, but I would definitely advocate for us to have signs and figure out what can the city do to make it better for these places that are illegally dumping. But then also, we can get our residents together and say, we have to build that neighborhood back where people say, I care about what my neighborhood looks like, and if there's trash or illegal dumping, let's work with code enforcement, let's work with who we can in order to remedy it. Because sometimes waiting on somebody else to do it, it'll never get done.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, that has to get done. I mean, I think that is like the perfect logic of that program would be to, I mean, if you're gonna have cameras, that's the perfect thing where you have habitual offenders basically taking advantage of a system. Now, the other thing is, I think we ask too much of the neighbors. I mean, I think the neighbors they're having a hard time as it is, and I think the city needs to do more, and I think the city needs to be more supportive. And I think that, sometimes we moralize to neighbors, and it's like, well, yeah, they're trying their best to raise their kids and trying to, have jobs and trying to make ends meet. And we need to do more as a city to say, hey, this part of town needs to be taken care of more. And I think that's something that's really important for me.
Excellent. Okay. So, next question. Neighbors on Olive and Johnson have been engaged in a conversation about traffic calming for years. We've asked for a speed bump to be installed on those streets specifically. The city installed an electronic speed sign on Johnson, but sadly, residents report that it has only served as a challenge to drivers who race past to see how fast they can go. People noted the 3 speed humps newly installed on Lathrop. Okay, but 3 on Lathrop, they said, and still none on Olive and Johnson. The question, what considerations do you make when deciding where to place a speed bump? And if elected to the council, will you commit to advocating for and voting to allocate dollars to install speed bumps on Olive and Johnson this next term? I think, a speed bump is about $15,000 per? Okay, and we're going to
Yeah, me first.
hand.
Yeah, so this is actually really interesting because this is not an issue I actually knew about going in, right? But then I went door to door and I had 3 people tell me, yeah, we have speed bumps on Olive, we're on Johnson. Why? Like, I'm on Johnson right now. People are racing here 60 miles per hour, right? So that happened all the time. So I'm like, all right, I got to get on this, right? And so I think that's like a major issue. They're like, well, you kind of half solved the issue. You put 3 on Lathrop, but you didn't actually do the place where people are speeding 60 miles per hour. I think we really need to do a better job of having equity where we put the speed humps. I think, in some of the nicer neighborhoods, you see them already. We haven't really seen them on that side of town besides the major intersections. Another concern I have also, and this is another thing that came up on Diamond Avenue, all of our trucks are running from like Steel Warehouse, et cetera, have to run through Diamond Avenue on that curve. And if you've noticed, like that infrastructure is really corroded because, 80,000 pound trucks, I work in DOT safety compliance. I know like how much wear that does to a road. So essentially, we're kind of corroding the infrastructure. We don't have a plan to sort of make sure that like ends up like, there's like any sort of maintenance program for that. And so I think some of these issues are like basically we're just using them to run trucks through, and we're not really taking care of things on the back end. And we need to do a better job of that.
Well, I advocated with Dr. Carol Boyles, who was with Public Works, and advocated that we get speed bumps. I live on Huey Street. From Marquette to Bergen Street, there is no stop sign. So people fly down my street like they're at the Indy 500. So personally, I know how crazy people drive. The reason why they put them on Lathrop was because people was using Bendix, Lathrop, and Portage and Cleveland as a drag strip. We had a teacher that was killed over in that area. We've had multiple accidents at that roundabout, and when people are pulling out from Johnson Street or Elmer Street or Huey Street. So they put them there to slow people down, which it has helped a whole lot. Because you as you're going up that hill, you used to putting on the gas. So for the first time in the history of South Bend, we actually have a traffic calming project that's being done. And so Johnson Street, Huey Street, Elmer Street, and I do believe Olive Street are going to be they're going to have the speed humps put in. Again, speed bumps are $15,000 a piece, and everybody in every city, in every community, on every street wants them. So we're rolling this plan out, and eventually, hopefully, we'll be in the place that we'll be able to address all of the areas that want them, because every street wants them, every side of town wants them, and so we're very excited about that. And they've had public meetings to roll out these plans so that people could give their input, and so I'm excited about that being able to happen, and this is the first time in the city's history that traffic calming has become an issue.
Can I add one thing that's not a rebuttal at all? I just wanted to add one more little thing is I think a lot of this actually infrastructure-wise, we need to narrow those streets like on Johnson and around there, because part of the reason it's so dangerous is that it's such a wide area. I don't know what side of Johnson you're talking about. Or no, part of those streets like those in the far west, northwest, we need to narrow them down a little.
No, you can't narrow those streets. They're already narrow enough, and most of the people have to park on the street.
All right, well, I'll leave that there.
Yeah. So, and people's cars have been hit, and if people are drinking and all that, it's been a mess. So traffic calming is important, and I want the Far North to know that every opportunity that I get, I am advocating, let's roll these out. So as they've been rolling out, I'm excited, and I'm telling people, just trust us. It's gonna happen, and when it happens, we'll be able to see in Detroit, they have speed bumps everywhere. And so people don't get shot on the regular side streets. People get shot on the highway. That's how they rolled it out. And so we've been looking into this. We've been studying this. I said I needed to start a business that made speed humps, because if they cost $15,000 a piece, then I'm in the wrong business. I should be making speed humps for cheaper than that. So we are addressing it, and it's coming, and we just got to be patient.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your robust answer to a robust problem.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
Okay, we're moving to one of the major issues in our community. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone anywhere in the city when asking about what are the major issues that it had. The issue of violence hasn't come up. And you've actually answered this question time and time again, and we're going to ask this question to you as well. This question actually comes directly from the League of Women Voters Vote 411, in case you want to check out a more comprehensive response to all of these different questions. Targeted shootings have increased significantly compared to 5 years ago. What can the council do to address the issue of local gun violence? What steps will you take to address the problem?
Okay,
This is a test.
I'll go.
I'm a teacher. I'm just seeing who's paying attention.
Sure.
All right.
So I'll take this, yeah. So I think, first of all, and I noted this in my answer to the League of Women Voters, is that really we have to think about this in a really big context. It only starts with development. Like we have to be starting with investing in young people, investing in their futures. We have to be investing in communities that have been disadvantaged from. So that's where we start from. There's another thing that we need to be looking at is like, how do we build in metrics to the anti-violence programs that we have so far? So like, we have good programs, but I think at a certain level, I want to see us take the next step to go to like model it off like the Richmond, California Peacemakers Fellowship. I think we need to have a better, like more sophisticated understanding of like what these kids need and what is going to get them from stop committing violence. I have an 11-year-old, I'm 38 years old. I know that he doesn't relate to me, and I know that probably nobody older than him will relate to him. And so I think we need to really get an understanding, what do these kids need? And we had an 11-year-old child shoot someone, get shot just this past week. How does that happen? What do we do this? And what do we do to solve this problem? And so I think we need to have like more metric-based programs for our anti-violence programs.
The job that I had, group violence intervention, one of the things that I started 4.5 years ago, I said we got to get into the elementary schools, because by the time a child is in middle school, they're already initiated into a gang, and then it just goes on from there. So we started building relationships with kids I still have relationships with now, who are now in high school, spending time with them. I went to the training for the Peacemakers Boot Camp and know the director of it. And what happened was the community decided that why bring somebody from outside and pay them $2 million to do what we have people in our community that don't get paid to do it. So what happened is that's how the Alive and Free grants were created, so that people who are in the community that are already doing this work could apply for these grants and be able to receive some money to do it. Now, the next issue is this. That's why I voted for the police raises, to get our police department fully staffed, because when you don't have a fully staffed police department, a lot of things get overlooked. But I can honestly say that our detectives, once they took over Metro Homicide, we have an 82%, and it might be 86% solve rate. If you've noticed, people who have done violent things in our city, they've been caught and they've been brought to justice. My nephew was shot right in front of my church, and the guy who was responsible for it, they used technology, they used Facebook, and they used their skills, and that person is now awaiting trial. So we do have a lot of great things that are working. GVI is the community, social services, and the police department working together, not against each other, so that we can address those who are involved in gun and gang activity and try to give them an opportunity so that they can turn their lives around. We help them with jobs, we help them with
10
education,
more seconds.
and we help them to be able to, we gave them the support system that they could have. And 77% of those individuals who went through the program are successful.
Thank you. Okay. So it is about 7:12. We will end at 7:30. I'm going to check in to see if there's any questions that's come through. If we have any audience members who have an interest in asking specific questions. If you do, please simply indicate that by coming on up to the podium. We actually have a couple of more questions that we wanted to check into with our candidates. One big issue, property taxes increasing. As property values and taxes increase in the far northwest neighborhood, many longtime residents are being displaced due to gentrification, or certainly have a concern because now their housing costs have bumped them. Many of us seniors, I'm almost a senior, that are on fixed incomes. This is a real problem. What measures will you take to ensure that property tax increases do not disproportionately affect low and fixed income residents and contribute to further displacement?
Regina, as a former city council person, I know you know that the city council, the taxes are not assessed by us. And there's not much we can do. It is assessed by the county. And the county is the ones who assess the taxes. So all I can do is be a voice to try to see what we can do to assist those that may need assistance or whatever. But that particular area, that's not in our purview.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the way I'd answer this question is, and I don't necessarily disagree that you can't do anything directly, but I think what this is speaking to is like a larger issue where we want to have growth in this part of town, but we also don't want to force out people that are longtime residents, seniors, people on fixed income. We want to make sure they're still able to live in those same neighborhoods. We've seen in the 4th district, if we've seen like the east part of town, they've lost a huge part of their older and especially minority population over the last decade. So we want to avoid that happening here if we're going to get growth. So some of the things we can do for that is to have assistance for older homeowners, for either home grants for like upgrading their homes, like upgrading their maintenance and stuff like that. And then other things that we can do is it can help them with their property taxes. If there's a wild jump for the property taxes, we need to have something that's in place that we can help them out with that. So I think there's assistance programs that we can do, but the larger issue is that we need to make sure as we're growing, we're not kicking out or gentrifying out basically older homeowners. And so that's one of the challenges. It's going to be, nobody has like you said, we're in the city council, we can't do everything, but that's going to be one of the major things that we have to keep our eye on as we're in office.
Again, the housing after the pandemic, everything is not the same. So we've seen our housing values go up. The cost of living has gone up. Everything has gone up. But one thing that we did do was, for those who were behind on their water bills, I voted to make sure that $3.1 million of water bill relief was sent to those who had past due water bills. And so those are the things that we can do. As I can't help with property taxes, but those things that we can do to make things better for residents every day, that's what I will do. Whenever I vote on anything, I'm always looking at not about how it's going to benefit me, but how is it going to benefit the residents of South Bend.
Okay, thank you. One other question. What is your plan or your ideas to increase affordable housing options for residents with income below the area median income? And how do you plan to address, again, those challenges of rising housing costs and displacement specifically? We've had a couple of, over the last few years, housing units, 100 families, that the unit was bought by, the development was bought by a developer somewhere, and everyone was displaced within a month or 2 months. They had to go. and that was transformed to market rate housing. So as that kind of comes through, it seems like we're the next frontier for the Notre Dame crowd. So what are we going to do to prevent displacement and find and secure affordable housing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that nails. I mean, I think that is going to be one of those issues where part of the first district is actually going to be closer to more like the second district, and then parts of it is going to be more like what is like near Notre Dame right now, or like what Harder Heights or such. Because I think that's not the next frontier of this investment. So this is a really big issue in front of us. What we need to make sure is that we're building density, and we're also building things that are like close to transportation, and then close to work. And so like we need to make sure that as we're developing up, we're using like public housing, and then we're also using like public partner developments, or partnerships rather, to be able to like build these sort of like 80% at income. That won't do the 80% income. What they're doing now, like at the 80% of area median income, is not going to like touch the gap. But that combined with social housing, public housing, more density within areas that are near like transportation, that's how we're going to get the gap. That's what we have to really do. But it takes a lot of focus to do that.
Thank you. Pastor Lee.
Well, one of the things to address affordable housing is that I've been working very hard with the new director of the Housing Authority for the last 3 years to help with navigating the relationship between the city and the Housing Authority so that we can get the Housing Authority back online. So we've been working hard, and we've made some progress on some things so that that the housing voucher is almost market rate, very close with the increases that HUD gave them, very market rate. So people can get the affordable housing that they need, and it be subsidized. The other things is we have great developers who are building great things. Cross community, they're building affordable housing on Harrison and Sherman. There's a fourplex being built. There hadn't been a fourplex built in 100 years. We also got a sixplex that's being built by an African-American developer. So what we have to do is, again, what we can do as city councilmen, I can't build a house, but what we can do is work with the developers who can do it and give them the tools that they need in order to be able to make that happen. And last night we just voted on several things that are going to help the sixplex get built and 2 more affordable housing opportunities. One of the things I love about what the Cross community is doing is now that they're making it where people don't have to pay the PMI, which is private mortgage insurance, which can be anywhere from $45 to $95 to guarantee your loan. But because people are going through their programs, they don't have to pay that. And for years, I was a housing counselor too, so I know about some of these things. So that saves people thousands of dollars off of their mortgage. So I'm willing to work with those individuals who are doing the work, and my vote will be to help those individuals continue to do that work in the far north and in the first district.
I'm familiar a little bit with that Harrison development. A lot of great stuff happening. And this is a great segue, actually, to some of our issues. The Far Northwest Neighborhood Association has been on the forefront of affordable housing and preventing displacement of legacy residents. Since we were actually formed in 2013, so we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, yay, of great, yes, we'll take that, sure, of neighborhood advocacy. Because of the work that we did, we actually got $6 million over the course of 3 years for specifically West Side development. I believe that the Cross Communities work actually got about $800,000 from that work that we've done. I think one of the things that is of concern of the Far Northwest is that every time we push for housing, even with the West Side pilot, back in 2018, you were there, you were our you were working in the neighborhood association at the time.
That's right.
We push for housing. We're the voice for the people to say, we must invest in the West Side. But then when the money comes down, we were actually, specifically in that one, the boundary was drawn to actually cut out the Far Northwest neighborhood. It was on Elwood, was where they stopped allocating the dollars. This is a huge problem. At the time, we had quite a number of people involved and coming to meetings and really being engaged and a part of that. And when all of that work came to the point where we won, this is great. The money is there, but then it wasn't given to us. It felt like a very deliberate blow to the people who worked so hard to make that available. We're not mad that affordable housing and home repair is happening in other parts of the city, but we are ready to get that investment within our own neighborhood and all of that work and all those tax dollars we've been given all the years to come to us. We actually spoke to both of our District 1 candidates about specific question that's just for them, that we'd like for them to share an answer to. And we'll start, since we're on housing, we'll start with Pastor Lee, Councilman Lee. A few weeks ago, the council passed a motion to reallocate money from the Far Northwest Neighborhood Association's Meade Street Duplex project. This is an affordable housing development created in line with our values of using Black builder to build for families and to build affordably. Our motto has been, use our tax dollars to pay our people to build our homes in our neighborhood. In 2019, the city allocated $250,000 for gap funding to support the Neighborhood Association's development of 4 duplexes. It's taken 4 years to get to a place where we are ready to build. 2 of those years were in a global pandemic. When the motion came for a vote, almost all the sitting council members voted to take that money away. Most notably, you, our district representative, also voted to take $250,000 away from your own neighborhood. Please explain why.
First of all, we need to address the fact that there was a contract between the Far Northwest and the city that expired in August of 2022 that I did not know it had expired until February. But what happened is, as they were cleaning up the books, because the contract had not been enacted, the money had to be reallocated. So it was because it would have been good to be able to go to them before the contract had expired, because you can get extensions when before something expired. But again, I wasn't made aware until February that it had expired, and they had to clean up the books. So as we were going through that process of reallocating and cleaning up the books, when I noticed that they said it was $250,000 that was supposed to be used for development that didn't happen, I started asking the questions and got to the bottom. And by the 7 o'clock meeting, we got to the bottom of what was going on. And then, and because the contract had expired, they couldn't let that money sit out there. So they actually said, when the neighborhood association is ready, we will find the money so that they can continue to do their project. Now, I know that we had went to Goshen to look at manufactured homes. We had met with people that were going to build the homes. And so I took that as it's on record that we will be able to go back. I took it because when you asked me to go and ask for an extension, I did go have a meeting with them. So when he said we will find the money, it's on the record, I was okay with that because I felt like that was saving this opportunity instead of letting it die. And so when we're ready, we will go back to the table and let's get ready to build. I've also asked, Kathy Schutz, if we need help, will they help us? Will they help mentor us in this process? Even Mr. Richardson, Jordan Richardson, who's building the Sixplex, had a conversation with him. So when we're ready, we're going to be able to have the funding available. But I knew that with all of the things that were going on, and you and I have had that discussion, and that at that time, when the contract expired, they had to reallocate that money to a project that is ready to go. And so they gave us their word that when we're ready, Caleb Bauer said, when we're ready, we will find the money. And
That's
so
a quick follow-up question. When we're ready, when you found out and realized that this was coming to a vote, I think part of the issue is like we had no idea it was coming to a vote. We were actually already had one meeting with the city about redoing that contract and felt like we thought we were in contract negotiations at the time. we didn't know that it was coming to a vote. Why didn't you, and we had this conversation, right, but why didn't you reach out to us to say, hey, you need to know this is coming to the council?
Because as it was presented in the meeting, there was some money left over. I remember at the 7 o'clock meeting that you had told me that the contract had expired and that they needed an extension. And so that's when I started asking those probing questions so that things could get put on the record so that we could continue to move forward. And so when they said that when they're ready, we will find the money to make sure that that we can continue with that project, that was satisfactory to me. And so that was it. And I called you the next day and I left you a voicemail message and I texted you because I knew that people were going to try to spin it a different way. And you don't ever have to worry about if Kenneth Lee is for the Far North Neighborhood Association. And because they gave us our word, we're going to make them stand to it.
Okay. Any rebuttal?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, like, you know, and I take him at his word, and I really do believe that he does advocate for the near Northwest, or the Far Northwest neighborhood. What I think the big problem is that there was no communication in the whole time. And I think part of what we get is that it's like we're getting representatives that explain things to the people after they do them, rather than involving them in the situations beforehand and as it's going on. And I think that's how we empower people. It's like we empower our neighbors, and we're wondering, like, how do we make people believe in the political process again, right? Because they don't believe it. We go down the street and they're not going to believe it. How do we do that? Well, we do that by giving them power. We do that by engaging them. We do that by saying, hey, you're responsible for this. We want you want to build housing here? We want you part of this process. And we honor that and we say, yes, if we're gonna have this vote, we want to make sure everybody that's in this neighborhood association is on board and is aware of every situation leading up to it. And so I think that's part of like the community engagement that we really need to build in South Bend. It's really critical. I think it's like how we really rebuild our culture here in South Bend.
Well, again, if you'll let me, again, whenever there's been an ask of me from the Far Northwest, I've gone and did the ask. And so, again, now if we're ready, then let's have that ask and let's get ready to make it happen.
I just want to note, thank you, Pastor Lee. It is 7:29, and I don't think that we can just stop without asking some tough questions to our other candidate. So if it's okay, is everybody okay? Let's have one more question.
Can I grab one of these ones?
Sure.
Yeah, you got one. Thank you.
Mr. Hammond, I tell you, the people in the Far Northwest are sharp. One thing they noticed is that when they looked at the list of candidates, they noticed two names that looked quite similar. And I got more than a few times, like, what is this? We electing family members now? Like, there was some concern about, why are we, everybody in the same family is running for office, and felt like that was just a concentration of power that just was not okay. So the question is, can you explain from your perspective, why should we vote for you?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and it's one I wanted definitely answered by everybody. So, so my mom was Mary Hammond. She died 10 years ago. I really loved her. She was one of the best things, ever. Lori stepped up like about 10 years ago and married my dad. So I've known her about 10 years, and she's been a great city council person. And we don't agree on everything politically, but what I see with myself is that I'm running for the people that, based on my life experience. And so that's why I feel like the people that I'm running for are the marginalized, the people that I've always been marginalized. I've always been poor. I've never owned a house. I've always rented. And so for me, it did not feel like a big step of privilege or anything like that to be running. But I run as my own man, 1st District. I've lived in 6 different houses in the 1st District. I've had 5 different jobs in the 1st District. So it's like, I kind of have that I feel like I'm on a place where I know this district more than anyone.
Rebuttal?
I'll just say this, everybody has a right to run.
Yeah.
I've lived in this district for 46 years. I have served as a pastor for 21 years. I've worked in group violence for 4.5 years. I'm not doing this for the income, I'm doing it for the outcome. I'm doing this because I want to make sure that the people that live in this neighborhood that look like me get represented. I'm the first African American to represent the 1st district in the history of South Bend. And so I don't take that lightly. I come from great parents. I come from great stock who taught me how to work and not to think I'm better than anybody else. So I'm not one that's not afraid to do the hard work and do the things that I'm asking other people to do. And I just believe that we can work together to make this city better. It's a lot of bickering, a lot of fighting, a lot of being torn apart. And so I'm that person that brings people together and say, let's talk, let's figure it out. And my campaign slogan is together we can. And I really believe that the only way forward for the 1st district is together.
Was that your 2-minute statement?
Nope.
Oh,
That was a rebuttal.
well, we are going to move to our 2-minute closing statements. Thank you, candidates. And why don't we hear from Mr. Hammond?
Yeah, so again, my name is Nick Hammond. I'm running for the 1st District of South Bend. It's critically important that everybody gets out to vote and they vote for the people that are representing everybody in this city. We need to bring everybody whether they're on the east side of town, west side of town, northwest side of town, we need to bring them all together and we need to make sure that we're all speaking with one voice. I'm not gonna take 2 minutes. Pastor Lee and I we both love South Bend. What I'll say is we need somebody who's gonna work for the city of South Bend, work for the 1st District, not somebody who's gonna be, just somebody rubber stamp for the mayor. So that's what I'm running on, and so please come out to vote May 2nd.
And to reply to that, in 2021, we didn't vote on the budget. We didn't vote for the budget because there were some questions that we had in the budget. So it's not that we're rubber stamped for the mayor, because I'm not. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna speak truth to power and try to work out what's gonna be the best outcome for the residents of South Bend. I walked to Marquette, rode the bus to Dickinson, walked to LaSalle and graduated from there. I'm a proud LaSalle Lion. This is my neighborhood, this is my community, and I do carry it on my shoulder. And when I meet with the mayor, I tell him the truth. And I tell him what from the perspective of the residents of this neighborhood feel, because I live here, and I have lived here, and I've been stable, and I'm a homeowner, I'm a business owner, I'm a pastor, and my family has invested a lot in the 1st District. And we love this neighborhood, and I love the residents of South Bend, and I love being able to serve on a higher capacity. And I'm asking for your vote on May 2nd so that we can continue the progress. And I believe that we're going to get to a better place where the 1st District is going to be the best district because we're #1. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for our candidates? We appreciate you coming out tonight. We look forward to continued engagement from our district representative. And thank you all. Thank you on Facebook, and good night.